I never thought I would step into a Catholic church to confront a wake, much less that I would leave there unable to stand. My name is Lucas Parker. I am 36 years old, and what happened to me and 14 other men was not a religious conflict. It was a dismantling, one of those that begins quietly when we still believe we are right. For many years, I was known as a man firm in faith. In San Diego, California, I was not seen as radical, but as someone trustworthy. A worker, a husband, an active member of the church, raised with a very clear understanding of right and wrong. I learned early on that loving God also meant guarding against error, protecting the truth, not allowing deviations, even when it cost discomfort. Beth was part of that same environment. We grew up in nearby neighborhoods, attended similar circles, shared acquaintances. Over time, she distanced herself from our church and drew closer to her husband's Catholic family. That always bothered me, although I never voiced it aloud. I registered it as a loss, not out of hatred, but out of zeal. Over time, that zeal turned into habit. I never confronted Beth in life. I just held on to the certainty that something needed to be corrected. When I received the news of her death, I felt real sadness. But when I learned that the funeral would be a Catholic Mass, something changed. It wasn't immediate anger. It was a sense of failure, as if we had let something slip away. As if, at the last moment, we were allowing an error to be sealed forever. My cousin Peter thought similarly. When I told him about Beth's death and how her wake would be, he felt the same way I did. We talked a lot about it that day. Our conversation was not heated. It was serious, contained, laden with conviction. He reminded me of how many times we had heard that the truth cannot be negotiated. Gradually, other men joined the conversation. They were not summoned. They were already there, in the routine of the church, in the meetings, in the services. Family men, ordinary men, shaped by the same biblical reading, by the same sense of spiritual responsibility. We weren't talking about confrontation. We were talking about correction, about testimony, about not remaining silent. We wanted to act in the name of true faith. We wanted to give Beth a proper ceremony according to evangelical doctrines, and not a Catholic ceremony with saints and hymns to the Virgin Mary. We were convinced of what we were going to do, and for that, we had to prevent that wake from happening. To us, that wasn't invading a wake. It was preventing an error from being consecrated in silence. Before I continue, I want to ask you something. Write down the day and the city where you are listening to this testimony. This is very important as it helps me know how far my words are reaching. Also, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Now let me continue from where I left off. In those days, the environment began to behave strangely, not with spectacular signs, but with subtle shifts. The street seemed quieter, conversations grew short. An improvised sign appeared on a corner, "Respect the pain." It vanished the next day. In the garage where we gathered, the air would grow heavy for moments, like before a rainstorm, and then it would pass. I interpreted everything as coincidence. When someone decides to act, they learn to ignore warnings. The night before the funeral, I passed by the closed church. The side gate was ajar. Tied to the gate, a blue cloth fluttered in the wind. Nothing more. No sound, no image. Just a detail out of place. I felt a brief tightening in my chest and moved on. On the morning of the funeral, I woke up before the alarm. It was still dark, and the house remained silent. I got up slowly so as not to wake my wife, Sophia. I put on my white shirt with the certainty of someone who believes they are doing what needs to be done. I still didn't know that this certainty was exactly what would be shattered. I went to the kitchen, drank water, and stood for a few minutes looking out the window. I wasn't nervous. I was focused. It was the feeling of someone who believes they are about to fulfill a responsibility. The conviction kept me upright inside. I believed I was doing what needed to be done, even if it was uncomfortable. Sophia noticed my discomfort as soon as I woke up. She didn't argue, didn't question long. She just asked if I was sure. I replied that I was. I said I wasn't against people, but in favor of the truth. She lowered her head, as if understanding she wouldn't be heard. Her silence accompanied me to the door. I met Peter a few streets ahead. Other men were already waiting. No one arrived in an excited manner. There were no fiery speeches. They were familiar faces, people with whom I shared church benches, Bible studies, volunteer work, fathers, husbands, sons. The unity did not arise from impulse, but from a common upbringing. We walked convinced that faith also requires posture. We walked on foot to the church. The sky was overcast, heavy, and the air seemed colder than usual. As we progressed, conversation ceased. The sound of our footsteps dominated the path. That caught my attention for a moment, but I ignored it. The decision had already been made. As we approached, I saw cars parked on both sides of the street. People were getting out silently, some with red eyes. I recognized old brethren, now mixed with other faces. I felt no anger. I felt urgency. To me, this was still a final care. We stopped in front of the wooden doors. I took a deep breath. My heart raced, not out of fear, but out of anticipation. I pushed open the door. The deep sound of the organ filled the interior space, slow, almost heavy. The smell of incense enveloped us immediately. It was there that I felt something different. Not a clear signal, but a brief hesitation, as if the environment was asking for caution. We entered and stayed at the back, side by side. In front, I saw the simple coffin surrounded by white flowers. I saw Beth's father, Mr. Carl, sitting with his gaze fixed on emptiness. He wasn't crying. That image pierced me more than I expected. I pushed the thought away. I couldn't waver now. The priest spoke in a low, tired voice. He spoke of farewell, of hope. Each word heightened the tension within me. I looked at Peter. He confirmed with a contained gesture. The moment was approaching. I still believed we would leave there with our certainty intact. I had no idea we were about to lose the ground that supported us. The priest continued speaking when everything inside me stiffened. His voice was serene, almost fragile, and that contradicted the image I had created. He spoke about trusting even when the pain seems unbearable, about surrendering what we do not understand. Each phrase clashed head-on with the conviction I carried in my chest. To me, that was the point of no return. I looked at Peter again. The gesture was minimal, almost imperceptible, but sufficient. We opened our mouths at the same time. Our voices echoed through the church, firm, rehearsed, cutting through the ceremony. The sound spread quickly, rising up the tall walls, breaking the rhythm of the wake. People turned around in shock. Some stood up. Others brought their hands to their faces. I saw Beth's mother hide her tears in a handkerchief. I saw her husband, Edward, stare at us without anger, just with something that seemed to have been crushed inside. That unsettled me for a second, but I held firm. I still believed I was doing what was right. The priest fell silent. The silence that formed was absolute. I expected reprimand. I expected expulsion. I was ready to stand by every word we had said, but he did not react as I had anticipated. He walked slowly towards us, careful steps, as if treading on sacred ground. When he stopped in front of the group, I saw something I did not expect. There was no anger on his face. There was sadness and compassion. He opened his arms. A simple gesture, almost childlike. He asked us to come closer. He asked us to pray together. He asked us to honor Beth. The words did not come as an order. They came as a plea. That dismantled everything. None of us moved. The plan vanished without warning. For the first time, I felt my conviction slip away. My eyes sought support in something familiar and found Beth's father. Mr. Carl slowly raised his face. When our eyes met, I felt a sharp blow to my chest. I saw no accusation. I saw a shattered father, holding the world up so it wouldn't fall. In that moment, all religious language lost its meaning. There was no right or wrong there. There was pain. I felt my legs weaken. The inner ground began to give way. I took a step forward without planning it, then another. Each step felt too heavy. The sound of my shoe echoed in the silent hallway. I no longer heard the voices around me. Something inside me was breaking. and I still didn't understand what would come next. I just knew there was no turning back. When I took the first step toward the coffin, I felt my whole body react. It was not fear. It was exposure. The priest moved slightly away, giving space. He seemed to understand that something was happening there, something that could not be put into words. I began to pray, but not in the rehearsed way. The phrases came out short, halting, almost an apology. Soon I heard other voices joining mine. One by one my brothers approached. 15 men who had entered together were now separated, each dealing with their own unraveling. When we finished, the priest asked for something unexpected. He asked for silence. Just a minute. No speeches, no explanations, just to be. He himself sat on the floor, a simple gesture that changed the atmosphere. People began to sit slowly. Catholics, Evangelicals, family members, strangers. The silence filled the space, dense, almost palpable. It was in that silence that something began to change within me. My mind, always restless, became quiet. For the first time, there were no arguments. I felt a gentle warmth spread through my chest. It was not common emotion, it was presence. I didn't need to understand. I just felt that I was not alone, that something greater was sustaining that moment. After the ceremony, the consequences came quickly. My father, Pastor Richard Parker, could not accept what happened. He said I had dishonored the family's faith. I was removed from the church. Friends distanced themselves. Comments arose. The conviction that had once sustained me now isolated me. Raphael decided to leave town for a while. The weight fell on all of us. At home, the atmosphere changed. Camilla tried to support me, but she was also confused. Conversations became short. Silence settled between us. I wondered if I had done the right thing. I had no clear answers, just a strange feeling of peace mixed with loss. It was like losing solid ground, but discovering that something invisible still held me up. In the following days, I returned several times to the memory of that minute of silence. Something there wouldn't leave me. It wasn't guilt, it was a calling. I began to realize that the faith I had defended so fiercely might have been more about control than love. That realization hurt, but it also made room for something new. I still didn't know what to do with it. I only knew I couldn't pretend nothing had happened. Something had been broken, and the cost was already being charged. I had to discover what would be born from that silence that accompanied me, even when I tried to ignore it. The silence of that day did not end when we left the church. It followed me home, to work, inside me. It was a different silence, not empty, but full of something I couldn't name, but that wouldn't let me find peace in the old way. I had lost certainties, but I was not lost. That confused me. On the first night after the funeral, I tried to pray as I always had. The words came out automatically, lifeless. I couldn't maintain the firm stance that had accompanied me for years. Everything in me was tired. For the first time, I didn't ask for answers. I just stayed quiet. And in that silence, I felt that gentle warmth in my chest again, the same presence I had felt in the church. It didn't come from outside. It wasn't a passing emotion. It was constant, patient. In the following days, the rejection became clearer. My father wouldn't talk to me. People crossed the street when they saw me. I lost my job. Paterro left town. The group that had once defined me now excluded me. Even so, something inside me remained strong. I was broken, but not empty. I returned to the church days later, alone, not to confront or prove anything. I went because I needed to understand what had happened to me. I was welcomed by Mrs. Rose, a simple lady, who called me son without asking where I came from. That disarmed me. I sat in the empty pews and stayed there, in silence. It was then that I felt it again, stronger, clearer, a maternal, welcoming presence that demanded no explanations. I looked at the image next to the altar. I saw no movement. I saw no spectacle, but I saw light. A soft, constant light that seemed to envelop the space without hurting the eyes. It didn't come from the candles. It didn't come from the stained glass. It was different. In that moment, I understood something I had never allowed to enter me. The love I felt didn't accuse me. It didn't demand from me. It simply embraced me. And through that embrace, it pointed to Jesus. I cried, not out of fear, not out of guilt. I cried like someone who finally understands that they no longer need to hold the world up alone. I had a long conversation with the priest. I was not pressured. I was not convinced. I was listened to. I began to read, to pray, to revisit everything I thought I knew. I did not abandon Jesus. On the contrary, I felt led to him in a deeper way than I had ever experienced. The path was not easy. The rupture with my family hurt. The distancing from my old community left marks. But for the first time, my faith was not based on the fear of making mistakes, but on the desire to love. Months later, I was officially welcomed into the Catholic Church. Simply, without fanfare, just truth. Today I work helping people. I don't ask about their religion or their story. I just serve. I remarried. I have a son named Gabriel. When I hold him in my arms, I think of that minute of silence that dismantled me to rebuild me. I entered that church thinking I needed to defend God. I left understanding that God does not need defense. He needs space. If you, who are listening to me, feel you are carrying too much weight, perhaps you are tired of sustaining harsh certainties. Perhaps you just need to stop, stay in silence for a minute. It was there that everything began for me. And it may be there that something new begins for you too. Thank you for listening to me today. Please kindly leave your like and subscribe to the channel. Help us grow more each day. May God always be with you. Amen.